Welcome to Emerging Franchise Brands, the podcast that introduces you to the visionary founders of America's fastest growing franchise opportunities. We'll also hear from industry pros as they share what it really takes to achieve the elusive milestone of 100 plus locations. I am your host, Frank Fiume, founder of I9 Sports, and my 20-year journey from inception to acquisition has given me a unique perspective on how to succeed in franchising. Join me as we welcome today's guest. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Emerging Franchise Brands podcast. On today's show, I have the president and co-CEO of the Big Biscuit, Chad Offerdahl. Chad, how are you today?
I'm doing great. I'm honored to be here with you, Frank.
Thanks, Chad. Great to see you again. I'm excited to talk about the Big Biscuit. So let's start out with it. Tell our audience, what is the Big Biscuit? What do you guys do?
So we're a breakfast and lunch concept. We're headquartered in Kansas City. We're open 6:30 to 2:30 daily, and we are traditional American breakfast and lunch food. So familiar favorites, traditional breakfasts. Obviously we have biscuit in our name, so we've got biscuits and gravy, and we've got plate-sized pancakes, and a lot of just good comfort food that our guests enjoy.
Awesome. Well, let's talk a little backstory here real fast. So I understand the company was founded in 2000, yet I guess you and a team of a few partners, right, back in 2010 acquired the company. Is that right?
Yeah. So Big Biscuit started in 2000 in Independence, Missouri, which is in Kansas City. And the founder had that location. He opened up a second one a few years later in 2005 and, just operated those. My partners and I, back in 2010, stumbled across the brand just by accident going through Kansas City. We stopped at the original location in Independence, and we had been looking for something, a restaurant concept. We wanted to break out and do our own thing. My two partners are former Sonic franchisees, and we were all just looking to do something else. And so anyways, we stumbled onto the original location and just were immediately struck by how much people loved it. The restaurant was busy. The food resonated with us. Everybody was happy. But what we also saw was there was so much opportunity there. I mean, it was a very old school diner. There was a lot we could add from just speed and organization and technology. And so we're like, man, we got to learn more about this. So we took a meeting with the founder and came to find out he had no plans of doing anything with the Big Biscuit. He just had his two locations and he was happy just to run those. And so we worked out a deal to acquire the brand, and he was more than happy to, because he wanted to see what Big Biscuit could become, because he wasn't going to do it. And so anyways, we acquired the brand and opened up the next location the next year in 2011, and really just got down to focusing on refining the brand, simplifying operations, updating the trade dress, improving technology, all those kind of things. And then we slowly started expanding, doing one store a year for a few years. And after a while, we increased to, 2 stores a year, 3 stores a year. And, I might be getting the cart ahead of the horse here, but we started franchising back in 2019, opened up our first location in 2020. And, fast forward to today, we've now got 29 open locations with more coming up here very soon.
Wow, that's impressive. Chad, I kind of think about our audience. It's kind of split. I have folks that, of course, are looking to buy a franchise, become a franchise owner. And I also have a lot of emerging founders that watch our show, and they're trying to glean information from other brand presidents, CEOs, and founders. And so I'm curious, from that perspective, what did you see in the Big Biscuit that, besides the food, of course, as a business opportunity, what did you guys see that made you think this is the right business for us to kind of pursue and acquire? What were they doing right?
There were a lot of things. We loved the name and we loved the logo. It was just something that, and even to this day, when people hear Big Biscuit, they get excited, like, oh, I love that name, and so that was something we loved. Like, okay, it's got a good foundation there. But also it's, we recently just got it trademarked actually, but it's the idea of the brand didn't mess with breakfast. So we have the trademark on don't mess with breakfast. And that's just the idea that, you know what, we don't chase every trend that's out there. We keep it simple, traditional, reliable, where, people can come to the Big Biscuit, and if they want to get bacon and eggs, they can get bacon and eggs. Now,
Hmm.
if they want to get, a gigantic burrito or a plate-sized pancake or any of the other stuff that we have, absolutely. But really, we offer, something that's simple and reliable that really you don't see quite as much anymore. And
Sure.
we appreciate that about the brand. It's just it's very comfortable, familiar food, and
Hmm.
that resonated with us. And then, also what we saw was, again, a lot of opportunity to take what was a good foundation, something that people really enjoyed, a small town diner that you could get this reliable food, servers that were happy and, serving you with a smile, but then make it scalable,
Hmm.
because they didn't have any training materials, they didn't have any procedures, it was just, kind of, like any mom and pop where you
Right.
just kind of, it's institutional knowledge. You just like know what to do, but it's not written anywhere.
Hmm.
That's what it was. And so we thought, okay, if we can take this and make it where it's easy to operate and we can replicate it and teach other people to do it, man, I think this could apply in so many different markets. And, now we've proven that to be true. And so
Wow.
that's pretty exciting.
Yeah. Well, so they had the blocking and tackling down pat, it sounds like. They had the
Yeah, they had a
fundamentals.
great base menu and a concept that people wanted to come to. And, it was just really adding some gasoline to it and refining it.
Okay, well, it's no short feat of going into the food business. It's not easy, right? And for your for your two partners that were Sonic franchisees, of course, they had the expertise and the experience. What were you doing before the Big Biscuit?
Well, I'm a second generation restaurateur. So, one,
Okay,
so
okay.
I grew up in a household that was restaurants. And, funny enough, I've got several siblings. None of them had the interest that I did, but I just grew up loving the restaurant industry. So I was in restaurants as much as I could, both, trying to learn it and work it, but
Hmm.
then also as a consumer, just because I loved the idea of being a part of a team in a fast-paced environment, trying to deliver a great experience for a lot of people. It's just the teamwork aspect, and so it's been in me ever since I was very young.
Okay, so you were built for this then.
Well, I don't know about that, but I definitely have had a passion for it for a long time. Yeah.
Well, I say that because this is not something we suggest for just anybody who just says, you know what, I like that food, I like the food there, I like the concept. I think I'm going to go ahead and buy that business if they haven't had a restaurant background.
Yeah, and I feel like I see that all too often is,
Yeah,
just because you know how to work out doesn't mean you're going to be good at owning a gym.
great
And
point.
just because, you enjoy eating in restaurants doesn't mean you're going to be a great restaurant owner. There's a big difference. And, I think that's important, especially for people that are looking to franchise, certain businesses. You've got to really consider, does your passion match your skill set? And in a lot of cases, it might, but there's also cases where it doesn't.
What about when you guys first took over in 2010? So the business had been around 10 years. Incredibly, 15 years ago now, you've owned this business. That's amazing. What were some of the early challenges in that transition time that you guys had to overcome?
Like I said, we started with nothing. Well, I shouldn't say nothing, but we started with a great foundation and of a brand name and a menu, but it was really taking what the magic was that the brand had and getting it into something repeatable, because we couldn't just simply keep, shifting staff back and forward and relying on that. So a lot of just getting everything systematized, documented, and in a format that could be easily trained.
Mhm.
That was a big undertaking. And honestly, that's why the first few years we were very slow of maybe one restaurant a year, is because every restaurant you open, whatever problems you have, you multiply them by that many, and so it's like
True.
we wanted to make sure that, let's skin our knees when we just have a few of these things so that when we get more, we're not multiplying our problems.
Right. And it was on your dime, not on a franchisee's.
Exactly. Yes. Well, and that's the whole thing with franchising, right? It's like
Right.
you're buying this business in a box. You
Hmm.
really want to be buying answers to the problems that you're going to have. And so if we get those figured out way in advance, it makes our offering that much more valuable to a franchisee.
True. And I'm really impressed. You guys have done what I have not seen very often in franchising is opening as many company owned locations before franchising. So you really mastered this. I mean, considering you had owned the business for 10 years and you guys have now 21 corporate locations, right?
That's right. And we and I'll credit my two partners on that, having been from franchisees formerly. It really has been our mindset since day one. We knew when we acquired the brand that we were going to utilize franchising as a method of our growth. We knew that from day one. But what we also knew was we didn't want to be the kind of franchisor that we had experienced in the past. We wanted to, really be a franchisee first franchisor. And, in order to do that, we wanted to, like we just said, figure out all these problems in advance, have a proven concept, have a number of locations, but then really in the few years leading up to franchising,
Mm-hmm.
we realized, what else we've done here too? We've made it where we can choose very specifically our franchisees because we have such a strong foundation.
Mm-hmm.
We don't need to make sales. We don't need to make franchise sales. Unlike other concepts that maybe, have one or two or three locations and then try to franchise,
Right.
they have to sell. I mean, they got to sell to survive. We
That was
were,
me, by the way.
well, you do what you got to do. But with us, it's like, we were royalty self-sufficient before we sold our first franchise,
Oh,
which just gave us so much strength and so many more options and time, and
mm-hmm.
that's why we're really happy and proud of the franchisees we have now. We have a great relationship with them. They're performing really well. And, the groups we're even talking to now about coming on with franchising, we just love that, what, there's no really the only urgency is just because we're excited about the opportunity, not because of
Sure.
anything financial,
Right. Right.
So
When you guys acquired the Big Biscuit and you had your two partners, obviously former franchisees, was the goal to buy a business that you were going to franchise, or did that come in after the fact?
it was right about the time we were acquiring it because we saw after again them being in the franchising world, but then
Mm-hmm.
seeing what the brand was, it just occurred to us like this could go anywhere. I mean, it's just such a likable, flexible brand. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, that's got to be part of our thing. I mean, we know that if we can make this work and we can teach someone else to do it, there's no stopping this brand.
Right, right. Oh, absolutely. So ultimately, when you decided to franchise, it was early on, but you waited the 10 years. Tell me about that transition. It can't be easy when you're running company-owned locations. You control everything, and now suddenly you're a franchisor, and the game has changed. And I know your two partners understand that from being franchisees. It's a different game.
Absolutely. But they'll even say, and if they were here, they would say the same thing. It's hard, right? I mean, franchising, it's not the same business.
Mm-hmm.
Just like for us, being a franchisor of the Big Biscuit is a completely separate function in business than having our own restaurants. I mean, that was definitely a very humbling experience of going through. Like, I went into franchising thinking I know this business like the back of my hand. I've been working in these restaurants for a decade. I've
Right.
hired everybody on this team. Like I know everything about this brand. And then I realized, okay, that doesn't mean I know franchising.
Exactly.
And so
Right.
that's been such a fun ride of getting to learn that this new business alongside, and it's made us better all the way through. But yeah, I mean, I would say that's the thing is going from operating to franchising, even if it's the same concept, it is not the same business.
Yeah. Well, how big is your team considering the amount of corporate locations you have, and now and obviously franchising being a huge initiative?
Yeah, we're really proud. Our franchisor team, we have 14 people in our headquarters right now that cover all the functions that our franchisees need, from marketing, PR, supply chain, IT, administration, operations, all the different facets. We've got very specialized people to support, and it helps our not only our franchisees, but like you said, our corporate operations as well, because we're basically a franchisee of ourselves.
Sure. Chad, there's like what, 4,000 franchise brands that are out there, opportunities. I'm curious, what's attracting franchisees to you? Is it people who have come into the restaurant and love the food, or is it people that just strictly have a business background? What have you seen so far?
But like you said, it's been predominantly people who love the brand. It's
Mm-hmm.
and our franchisees now have in their own words separately said, I love this brand for the opportunity, but I love it as a consumer. It's somewhere that I want to eat. It's somewhere that I enjoy, and it's something I can be proud of. And that's really, as I've talked to people who have either just sought us out because they've tried our restaurants or they've seen us at a trade show, they always want to talk about how they love the brand. It's very rare that I'm talking to someone who is love your numbers. Even though we have
Right.
great numbers and we're very proud of them, it's that it resonates with them that they love what it is.
Cool. What kind of person do you think thrives in your franchise system? Who are you looking for specifically?
Someone who wants to be really engaged with the business. Our operations, our opportunity is set up where if somebody wants to be an owner operator, they obviously can.
Hmm.
But we're also set up where this can be, something that is, less hands-on, but really we want our franchisees to be engaged. Someone who's a part of the community, someone who gets in and understands the concept, goes through the training process, you know, when so we can have conversations when we're talking about menu. We love feedback from our franchisees. We
Yeah.
just recently rolled out a pretty significant menu change, probably our biggest one we've ever done. And I really enjoyed getting to talk to our franchisees through that design process of the new menu. And
Hmm.
that wouldn't be possible if they weren't really hands-on and understood the business of what our guests are asking for, how it's going to affect the operations, not just
Hmm.
the numbers. And so that's a really long way of saying, someone who loves hospitality, someone who wants to be really engaged and understand the business for more than just the numbers, and be good stewards, be in the community. And we one of our big pillars is community. We love getting involved and giving back and doing donations, and we need franchisees who believe in that as well.
Sure. And I understand from our previous conversation that you're actually seeking multi-unit franchise operators, right, in larger markets, right?
Yeah, so we're so far 100% multi-unit franchisees. We do offer single unit territories. We've just
Mhm.
so far found franchisees that want to go dive in and because they're ready. But yeah, we're really, I don't know if we're going to be able to sustain it forever, but we're really trying to avoid as much as possible having multiple franchisees in markets.
Sure.
We want franchisees who want to commit to, whatever size market it is and then take it. So that way they can just focus on them and their business and not feel like they're competing with another franchisee.
Yeah.
But we do offer both in single and multi-unit territories.
And tell me about the multi-unit franchise conference. I understand you just came back from there, and what kind of feedback did you get?
Oh gosh, for anybody who has not gone to multi-unit franchise conference and you're in the franchise world, you need to go. It is so well done. And as a matter of fact, I went for the first time
Hmm.
last year and was blown away, so much so that we decided we need to be an exhibitor. So we went back again this year and had our debut as an exhibitor, and the reception was just wonderful. There's so many successful, like-minded people in there. The amount of industry knowledge in that conference, you can't put a price tag on it. And, just getting to see all the brands that are out there, their different offerings, but then also getting to expose yourself and gain knowledge. They've got great breakout sessions and keynote speakers, and it's a powerhouse 2 days. And again, I highly recommend it.
Yeah, and it's a little bit different than your regular IFA conference or Springboard, of course. I always think of multi-unit franchise conference. Now, I have not been to, but I think of the multi-unit franchise operator, typically a more sophisticated buyer, somebody who, of course, has some franchise experience. We don't want to sell a franchise to anybody who hasn't owned one before. But I would imagine that kind of played a role into just the camaraderie and the kind of discussions that you had during the conference.
Yeah, it really is pretty incredible. Even sharing knowledge between competitors. I mean,
Hmm.
there were a few other competitors there in my space, and we were, giving each other advice and bouncing ideas off each other just because, we all recognize that, even though we may be competing for the same franchisees, it's better to help each other win than
Right.
try to, tear each other down or sell away. So, it's like, we scratch each other's backs, and it's just really refreshing.
Nice. Chad, what's the investment range to open a franchise?
So we're with real estate included. It'll range anywhere from 1.1 to, I believe we're at 2.2. I would need to double check our FDD, but that would include real estate. So our offering is very flexible. We have inline, end cap, freestanding. We can do all those options. Conversions. So
Hmm.
our franchisees have a very flexible investment. So that's why that range is so wide. It depends on how you skin that cat.
Yeah. And what about how we're impacted right now on build out time and stuff? I know that that's an issue in some places around the country with construction costs and just trying to find a spot.
Yeah, it's the construction costs are squeezing us all right now. I mean, it
Yeah.
definitely is a challenge. We're constantly evaluating our build outs and finding ways to, save on areas without sacrificing our offering or our build out or anything. Just, any little way we can from anything that's inside the walls or
Right.
unseen or whatever. What can we do to be more responsible? And we've found a lot of great ways to do that. But it's definitely a struggle.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Hopefully things kind of turn around there. Tell me about training and support. What does it look like?
So like I said, we have a very robust, skilled team at HQ. We have, we're based out of Kansas City. We've got the majority of our corporate locations in the Kansas City area. So when we train a franchisee, we invite them up to our Kansas City market, and they get to spend a lot of time with our team in our restaurants, hands-on, learning, everything from making all the menu items to how our technology works, how we work in the dining room, procedures, all those kind of things. But we also are a very tech forward company. We recognize that, training is a big commitment. So we only do the training on in person that we need to
Hmm.
do. Everything that is, knowledge based on how, the back end, we have that virtually where that can be done from an office or from home. Don't get me wrong, we love spending time with our franchisees face to face,
Sure.
but we know that everybody has lives. So we keep that as efficient as possible.
That's smart. Obviously in this day and age where you can do so much online, just giving people, I think, just a more digestible training, right? Where they can do it online over a period of time. They're gonna understand the information a whole lot better.
Right. And the thing is too is we don't count down the days, right? And say, okay, well, you have 2 days left of training and then, whatever you guys got, you're good.
Right.
We take the time to make sure. I mean, it's in our best interest to make sure that the franchisee succeeds. And if they need more time, they need more time. Or, if they've got it down, they've got it down. It's we don't believe in a one size fits all kind of program. So it
Hmm.
really is tailored to the needs of each franchisee of what they need and how long they need.
Sure. You mentioned earlier, I think that you guys are currently in 4 states.
Correct. Yep. We're in Kansas, Missouri, and Oklahoma.
Okay, trying to stay in the Midwest and kind of central part of the U.S., or are you looking nationwide now?
We're not really driving it from geographics, even though ideally we would like to keep,
Hmm.
a regional like nucleus and grow geographically. The primary driver for us is going to be the right relationship with the right franchisee. We know that our brand is very capable and flexible to a lot of different markets. And we have markets all over the United States we've identified that we know we're excited to go into. Our first and foremost is just finding the right franchisee, and then
Hmm.
we determine where they want to go. We've got agreements and partnerships set up with all of our different suppliers and vendors where we're set up in a way where we can go anywhere continental US right now and operate. So again, it's just back to the right relationship with the right group.
Nice. Well, for selfish reasons, I'm looking forward for you to come to Tampa.
I would love that too. That give me a reason to be down there a little more.
That would be great. That would be great. Chad, where do you guys see the brand going next kind of 5, 10 years if you kind of look out?
We're really focusing now on getting increased exposure for franchising. We've spent the
Hmm.
last few years with our current franchisees. They're growing their units. Like I said, we went to multi-unit franchise conference for the first time this year. We're really getting our name out there and focusing on franchising alongside our corporate growth. So we're going to continue to open up corporate locations. In fact, we're going into the Wichita market this year and next year.
Okay.
So we're going to continue our corporate footprint and make sure that we always intend on having a very strong percentage of the overall restaurant count because again, it gives us more credibility. The decisions we're making for the brand,
Hmm.
our franchisees know we feel it as much or more than they do. We're not
Sure.
we're not just suits behind a desk worried about what we can do to drive up revenue at the expense of profit.
Right.
And so we're going to continue growing our corporate footprint, but really we're going to hit the gas on franchising, and we're trying to get our name out there and find the right franchisees.
Nice. You mentioned earlier about redoing or revising the menu. That's super courageous of you, especially for a brand that's been around a while. Are you guys noticing a trend in customer taste changing, or what's maybe a change that you're seeing in the restaurant that over the last 15 years?
Well, definitely right now, as anybody in the food space knows, beverages are the name of the game right now. Everybody wants a fun, funky beverage or a tea
Hmm.
or things like that. So we've over the past year and a half been optimizing and increasing our beverage offering, and that has just been a huge success. We are very happy that our guests love it, and we've been able to do that while keeping true to our promise of not messing with our breakfast, and keeping, and then more importantly, keeping operations simple because yeah, it's easy to add, right? But you have to be diligent of, we even have it inside. We have a decision making flywheel internally in our company. And in there, we have it where one of the things we do is for every menu item we add, we're taking one off because
Hmm.
otherwise, you just get carried away. So we have built in things to make sure that we're staying true to what our brand is. We serve our food fast. Our average ticket time is 6 minutes. So from the time the order is
Wow.
placed until the time it's coming out of the kitchen is 6 minutes. And we can do that. We have no microwaves in our restaurant. And
Hmm.
we are proud of that. And that's because we focus so much on speed. So we can have guests come to us over a lunch break or in the morning before a game or, whatever it is. And they can get a lot of food high quality with served with a smile really fast, and we have to be mindful of that because yeah, it'd be easy to say, let's add avocado this and let's add, espresso that. And, it's next thing yeah, we've got a lot of fun stuff, but now we're taking beyond 10 minutes and people are, taking longer to order, all those kind of things. So, I know I kind of rambled on there, but
No, 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 it's great.
it's something we're very mindful of.
Yeah. Well, I'm super impressed with what you and your team have accomplished in 15 years. And, despite not being the founder, you guys have taken such great ownership of this brand. And I feel like there's maybe a legacy here that you guys are kind of feeling be part of. Is there, do you kind of see like what type of legacy do you hope to leave with this brand down the road in the future?
Gosh, that's a good question. We're in this because we want to win and we want to build something we're proud of.
Mm-hmm.
It's we know that with our team, and we've got an incredible group of people inside our team here. With our team, all of us rowing in the same direction, it's really just the excitement of seeing what we can do. And every time we, open a new store or bring on a franchisee, and it's that fresh excitement of people who are just so in love with the brand. It just reignites you all over again of like, man, we're really sitting on something amazing here. That's what keeps us going every day. It's just like, what can we do? We're like, we could sit here and say, we want to have 200 locations by X date, which
Mm-hmm.
don't get me wrong, I would love to, but that's not what drives us. It's just like, we are going to bust our butts and we are going to do the best we can. And let's see where this thing goes. As long as we make the right decisions along the way and we do
Mm-hmm.
what we know is right, we know that this thing has legs bigger than probably we realize.
I love the passion behind the brand for you guys. I'm super excited for your future. Besides all that, though, tell me, why is now a great time for somebody to join the system, be a franchisee?
I would say there's a lot of things, but probably two primary things that come to mind. One is we are set up, we have 8 franchise locations and we have 14 support staff in our HQ. So we're
That's
we're
impressive.
so front heavy on that. We can support our franchisees in a way that other concepts would maybe take 50, 60 or more locations to
Mhm.
offer the same level of support. So we've got that. But then also, because we're just getting started and we're emerging, the territory opportunities are so abundant. I mean, it is now is the time if you want to get into the breakfast segment and get in with the Big Biscuit and carry our vision. Now's the time because you can basically choose where you want to go.
And it won't be for long.
Yeah, well, and we are blessed that we've already got a few groups that are kind of looking at similar spaces right now in a certain market. So, but we have, I mean, like you said, we're only in 4 states, so the opportunity is enormous.
Yeah. All right. Well, if someone was interested in learning more about the franchise, where would they go?
BigBiscuitFranchise.com. That'll have everything you need on there. You could also follow me on LinkedIn, Chad Offerdahl. I post on there, and we've got our Big Biscuit page on there that talks all things Big Biscuit.
I follow it. I'm very cool, Chad. All right, last question I have for you. I end every podcast with a franchise tip jar because the community, as you shared, is just so generous with sharing information, like even competitors. But in this case, if you had a friend who came to you and was interested in being a franchisee of another brand, what would be a piece of advice you'd give them to make sure that they're making the right decision?
Let's see where to start. I would say there's obviously, you have to consider experience, reputation, track record, all those things with a franchise. But beyond the obvious, I would tell them or remind them that to just keep in mind, you're not just buying a system, you're not just buying a business, you're aligning yourself with the people running that brand. It's you're buying leadership, and your relationship with, your trust in them is really such an important factor. Is this somebody or these group of people, somebody you can work with for 10, 20 or more years? I would say that's the relationship has always been, to me, the single most important thing, is because COVID was a perfect example. There's going to be very hard times in our business. Now, hopefully not to the level of COVID all the time, but there's going to be hard times, and you want to be in business with people that are resilient and that you can be in the trenches with.
Chad, that is fantastic advice. That is great. Love it. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Thank you so much for being on the show. And I wish you all the continued success with the Big Biscuit. Thank you for tuning into the Emerging Franchise Brands podcast. For additional insights, guest applications, and to stay connected, visit us at efbpodcast.com. The Emerging Franchise Brands podcast is for entertainment purposes only, and the views expressed do not necessarily represent those of Emerging Franchise Brands, its host Frank Fumey, or Emerging Franchise Group LLC. Any discussed franchise or investment opportunity requires thorough investigation, obtaining proper disclosure documents, and expert consultation before making any investment decisions. The podcast and its host do not offer professional advice or endorsements, and they hold no responsibility for actions, representations, accuracy, or consequential damages related to the podcast content.